Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Gold Mine. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Michael Levitt. Let's get mining. Were you raised in a entrepreneurial home?
Actually, no. Both my parents worked for organizations. My dad worked for the auto sector for pretty much his entire adult life, and my mom worked in a few different industries part time as she was raising my brother and I. But yeah, there wasn't really much of an entrepreneurial spirit in the house. Work ethic was definitely there. They both worked very, very hard at what they did. But as far as the entrepreneur world, that wasn't existent.
When did you first realize there was such a thing as entrepreneurship, and why did you decide that that was something you needed to do?
My first taste of it was actually in the very early 1990s. I was working for a CPA firm at the time. My original career was public accounting, and we were working with obviously a lot of small businesses. And I was looking at what they were doing and some of the freedoms and flexibility that they had in running their own business. And I thought, you know what, let's try this. So here I was, 19 years old. Let's launch a consulting business. And we all know at 19 we think we know everything. I've been a few decades away from 19 and I still don't know everything. But back then, I certainly thought I knew the world and how to consult businesses. And that business did not go very far because I really didn't know what I was doing and shut the business down and went back into just working for organizations for several years. So that was my first taste. The second one came about 7 years ago. And this was after recovering from what I like to call my year of worst case scenarios, which covered between 2009 and 2010. So over a period of a year, I had a heart attack that should have killed me. I lost my job during the Great Recession. My car was repossessed and my home was foreclosed all in a year. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me because it gave me an opportunity to take a really long, hard look at how I was living my life, which obviously was not good. And I made some changes. And once I did that and started working again for organizations, that entrepreneurial bug bit me again. And I started looking at different opportunities. And what came about was, all those losses that I had in that year were all driven because I was burned out. And I started doing a lot of research on burnout and burnout prevention. And it came to me that, okay, this is a big need in society. So I decided to launch my organization, Breakfast Leadership. And here we are today. And it's been very fruitful and very beneficial. And I'm helping a lot of organizations and individuals with burnout prevention in their life.
It doesn't sound like it, but did you have any fears? Because, right now, so first it was the recession, then it was the government shutdown, and now it's the pandemic. And throughout those times, people said, okay, you don't have to leave your job, but you should at least start a side gig, have multiple streams of income. And so many people stop themselves from doing that. And so was
Right.
there ever any fears you had to stop being an entrepreneur, or did you just dive right into it and figure it out?
This second go around, I realized that this is going to take time, and I had a lot of great mentors, and said, don't expect to be rich overnight or within the first 2 or 3 years. It's going to take some time, and by doing that, it gave me the permission to realize, okay, let's play around with this. Let's go ahead and see what we can do with this. Let's listen and see what is in need and create something to address that need. And by doing that, understanding that it's going to take some time, I was in it and am in it for the long haul. I want this to, nothing would make me happier if burnout didn't exist, because then I'd go find something else to do, but it does. So it keeps me very productive, and I'm constantly looking for new ways to present the material in a way that can be received and actually implemented by people. So to answer your question, no, I never really had this, I'm going to throw this in type of thing. If anything, it was, it just reinforced my desire to, stay as my own, business and do the things that I'm doing.
So talk about the Breakfast Leadership Network. What is it, and anyone who joins it, what can they expect from it?
Breakfast Leadership Network was birthed out of my original organization, which was Breakfast Leadership, which I did consulting and still do for Fortune 500 organizations and small businesses and some individuals, depending on the time that they have and the time that I have. The network came about after a conversation with some C-suite executives as we were talking about things. And my business went from consulting, and then I started doing a lot of writing. I've published several books. Breakfast Leadership Show, my podcast, has been on the air for a little over 4 years now, interviewing global thought leaders across the planet, which is great. And I'm bringing on some additional content providers for the network, whether it's in written form or in podcast shows. So in talking with these executives, they said, well, you got a media firm. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, no, I'm a consulting firm. I said, no, you're doing a lot of media. You're doing print, you're doing video, you're doing audio, you're publishing books, and you're creating constant content on your site for business leaders and whatnot. So you're more in the media realm of things. So I thought, okay, let's rebrand to the Breakfast Leadership Network. So again, address small businesses. There is a focus on burnout, but there's other things as well that I touch on to make sure businesses are doing the best thing they can do to be successful, no matter what industry they're in.
Cool. So can you give any advice to someone who has not started or is just beginning entrepreneurship? At least one thing you learned throughout your time that no one taught you that you would like to share?
Find a mentor that is about 18 months to 3 years ahead of you in the entrepreneurial journey, because it's still going to be fresh in their mind, some of the struggles that they faced, that they can help you avoid some of them. You're not going to avoid them all, believe me. And we've all tried to have this nice straight line from launching the business to success. And of course, success is defined as whatever we feel success is. There's always those twists and turns. There's always those, spending a bunch of money on Facebook ads and not working. And some companies do, and they make money. But for a lot of people, that hasn't worked out. But we've all done it. And there's other things that we've done that unfortunately, can cost us some time and money, but understanding that it's not going to be a straight line. There's going to be steps along the way. And sometimes you'll take a few steps back, but then you'll move forward. And, having a mentor that was a couple years ahead of me was really, really helpful, because it helped me realize, okay, no, you don't need to do that. And you can do this instead. Because as an entrepreneur, we all want to do everything. We think this is our business, we're going to do all of this stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of times what happens is we spend too much time on things that aren't doing anything to grow the business or improve what we do for our customers. It's just spinning our wheels and wasting time. Getting to figure out what those things are, the sooner the better, will allow you to really hone in on what your business is going to do and the customers you want to serve.
Cool. So I actually had a question for you that I forgot to ask, but you kind of answered it. I'm looking at your book because I saw that you were the founder and chief burnout officer, and I said to myself, is that an actual position that exists? And then I realized it's, I guess, something you created. So explain exactly what a chief burnout officer is.
It's a title that I gave myself to give, a little bit differential from chief executive officer. For me, nothing would make me happier to see organizations have their own chief burnout officer in their organization, because burnout is such a huge issue. We're seeing it, there was studies, Deloitte released a study not too long ago that indicated that 61% of those surveyed have identified as having burnout in their current organization. The World Health Organization just recently released some information from 2016, which indicated that the number of people dying of heart attacks or strokes is approaching, or at that point was over 700,000. And the main cause of those people having the heart attacks and strokes was they were working more than 55 hours a week. Entrepreneurs put in a lot of hours. And sometimes they put in 70, 80, 90-hour weeks. And to what avail? If it's growing their business, they're trying to expedite growing their business. And if you work more than 55 hours, you're not taking care of yourself, not physically, mentally. If you're a person of faith, spiritually, you're just not doing things that are beneficial to you, and you're running yourself ragged. Now, those numbers that I gave you from the World Health Organization are from 2016. Based on what I have seen and all the stats and research that I've seen over the last 5 years, I'm willing to guess that globally that number is at or a little bit above 1 million people a year are dying of heart attack or stroke because they're working more than 55 hours a week. That's not sustainable. You don't want to be in that category. I nearly died. My cardiologist told me I was very lucky to be alive before he put the stents in my artery. He said I should have died from this heart attack, but I didn't. And I'm very thankful for that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't get that same second chance like I did. And it's because they're working all these hours trying to build their business. And again, you have a successful business, but then you're dead. Okay, for what point? Why is that important to you? There's a way to do it without burning out and still get the success that you want. Yes, it's going to take time, but you want to be healthy to be able to celebrate your labor and not, be laid up in a hospital bed because you work too many hours. And your business, of course, will end up struggling or dying if you haven't learned how to delegate or only do the things that you can do.
Cool. Yeah, I remember reading an article that people who work 7 days a week usually die younger than those who work less. So how has the pandemic either affected you negatively, positively, or both as far as your personal life and your business?
From a business standpoint, business has grown dramatically. A lot of people have been burning out, the working from home burnout, the Zoom burnout, all of that. And now we're starting to see, as things are starting to reopen, there's a lot of anxiety amongst employees and employers on the return to work. Is it going to be everybody come back to work? Are they going to be working remotely more? Is it going to be a hybrid? There's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of people are dealing with some significant anxiety and stress, and prolonged stress turns into burnout. So in this pandemic has been prolonged and very stressful. So you're seeing a lot of people dealing with some significant stress and potentially even burning out because of all the demands that we've been facing. So from a professional standpoint, I've been keeping pretty productive speaking across the globe, virtually, of course. My luggage misses me. I haven't been able to fly anywhere in a long time. So, but thankfully, I'm able to utilize technology like we're using today to be able to talk with audiences and share with them what burnout is, how to prevent it, how to recover from it. Personally, I'm healthy. I'm vertical, which is always a good thing. But there are days, where it's frustrating because there's some, freedoms and flexibilities that we have not been able to deal with and have, for a while. I spend my time between Toronto and San Diego, and I'm in Toronto at the moment because the U.S.-Canadian borders are closed. So to non-essential travel. So basically, I'm not free to, go back to the US and speak at conferences because they're starting to have events again in person. And right now, because of the border closure, I can't go to those events. So that's, personally bugging me. But I know that in time that will open up and this will be behind us, and life will be whatever normal is going to be again. I'm looking forward to that. But my health has been good, so I have no complaints when it comes to that.
A little fun question I have for you. During your time of living, have you ever been inspired by an entrepreneur that you would consider you would like to meet for conversation? And this person doesn't have to actually be alive. So any
Okay.
entrepreneur you can think of that you would like to talk to, why would you like to talk to this entrepreneur?
My hunch, there's a few, but I think the one that jumps out at me time and time again is Michael Hyatt, who used to be the publisher or the CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishing. And then he retired from that position and then launched his own brand and has been quite successful. at it for several years now, and he was one of those mentors. He'd like to identify himself, I think, as a virtual mentor, and this was 10 years ago. But he was very inspirational to me as far as when I was recovering from my year of worst case scenarios and rebuilding my life and all that. I tended to read a lot of his content and love what the work that he has done and he does. And very similar to him, he's got all daughters. I have all daughters. So he likes to joke that this is his joke, just make it clear, that he suffers from estrogen poisoning. So he says that tongue in cheek because I know he loves his daughters and his wife. But I get it, and being in a household with all women, it, creates its own dynamics and all of that. But for him, he was an executive similar to me in a role, quite successful, and then launched his own business from scratch. It wasn't like he bought a franchise and built it up that way. No, he started from ground zero. And I think that, spoke volumes to me, and especially with the success that he has today. It's one of those things I would, if I ever have the opportunity to have a conversation with him, I would love that opportunity.
Cool. All right, hold on.
Michael Levitt is the founder and Chief Burnout Officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network.
And this is an epidemic that faces executives, managers, frontline people, parents, single parents, marriages, children, in every industry, healthcare, legal, retail, everywhere. And this epidemic is burnout.
A San Diego and Toronto-based burnout media firm. He is an in-person and certified virtual speaker, a certified NLP and CBT therapist, a Fortune 500 consultant, #1 best-selling author, and hosts the Breakfast Leadership Show.
My cardiologist jokes when he has his heart attack, he wants one like mine. And I'm like, okay, and you're treating me, okay.
A top 200 podcast on iTunes. Michael's a top 20 global thought leader on culture with Thinkers 360, and a former healthcare executive.
I have rules and guidelines on how my days are designed. Why? Because I have OCD, or as a poster that I have says, I have CDO, which is OCD, but the letters are in the proper alphabetical order.
Please welcome to the stage, Michael Levitt.
That is all the time we have for you today on The Gold Mine. I want to thank our guest, Michael Levitt, for sharing his story. And of course, you, the audience, for taking the time to view. Have a great day. Have a great week.